Joining me now is Alabama's only Democratic Congress member, Representative Terry Sewell, who is the first Black woman to represent Alabama in Congress. Congresswoman Sewell, thank you so much for joining today. This is quite extraordinary because the Alabama Republicans who drew these maps have now been rebuffed by the Supreme Court twice in a span of months on this issue. Why did they not understand the first time?
Well, first of all, Laura, thank you so much for allowing me to be on their show today. You know, when I went to law school, I don't know about you, but when I went to law school, when the Supreme Court said you won, you won. So defying the Supreme Court was not a great idea. But despite the efforts by state legislators, state officials in my state to obstruct, to delay, to defy, the Supreme Court was unanimous in its decision to stop them from trying to reinstate those old maps. And I am just thrilled. I think the real winners here is the state of Alabama, all of the voters, because it's about fair representation. 27% of the Black voting age population in my state is African American. There are 7 seats. Only 1 seat allows us to choose a candidate of our choice, and that's simply only 14% representation. So this was really about diluting the strength of the Black vote in Alabama, and so I'm just thrilled that today we are celebrating that Alabama can't go backwards. We're going forwards, and we're going forwards with fair congressional maps.
It clears the way, Congresswoman, for maps proposed, by the way, just this week by a court-appointed special master that would create a second district with 50% Black representation or very close to it. You are the only Black representative for Alabama. What are voters telling you about this potential change?
They're so excited. You know, I think that this is really about political power and the struggle for political power. And, you know, power and struggle doesn't come without a fight. I am just proud of the plaintiffs in the Milligan and the Castor case for sticking this out. But you know, this is really about fairness in representation. I want to make sure that every voter, despite their race, their zip code, has an equal opportunity to vote in this democracy. It's critical, it's fundamental.
You know, people might look at this and say, well, adding another majority Black district guarantees something for Democrats. But your point is that you have to have the opportunity to elect a candidate of your choosing. It does not guarantee the result that will actually follow, but that you have the opportunity. That would be fairness. But you also have razor-thin majorities in the House that could actually determine control of the next Congress if you add an additional seat. This is quite significant.
It's very significant because not only does Alabama, we were the first out the gate, but Louisiana, a case in Louisiana is next, and then comes Georgia. And frankly, I can see lawsuits in Mississippi and South Carolina as well. All of these states only have one majority-minority district, one representative in Congress that's a Democrat, and yet these are 6 seats in Mississippi. 4 or 5 seats in South Carolina. So this is really not just about congressional maps. It also has consequences for our county commission and our state legislative maps. All of these maps, to the extent that maps are drawn by, governments and not these legislatures, and they don't fairly draw Black voters in, that they pack Black voters and try to make sure that we're not, our full voting strength is not there, that those maps will be thrown out. And so this is a real warning to state legislatures across this country that the Voting Rights Act is alive and well. You know, I'm really proud of the fact that last week we reintroduced the John Robert Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act because we want the full protections of the Voting Rights Act. As we talked about earlier, Section 2 is just one part, but only Congress can get back a Section 4 by coming up with a modern-day framework for determining which states are discriminate against minority voters. And so we want the full protection of the Voting Rights Act. John Lewis would expect nothing else. So I'm looking forward to rolling up my sleeves and getting into good trouble, necessary trouble, in order to make sure that we get the full protections of the Voting Rights Act.
Well, Section 5, that formula that has been gutted and everyone's looking at, one that, of course, Congress could act upon. So important to hear your perspective, so important for people to realize democracy is in the voting and in the counting. And it sounds like gerrymanderers beware. Congresswoman Terry Sewell, thank you so much.
Thank you, Laura.